Emma's eyes burned as she clicked through the final draft, slide 128 of 129. Her fingers trembled not from fatigue, but from the coffee-fueled adrenaline cocktail that had replaced her bloodstream somewhere around 3:40 a.m. She hadn't stood up in 8 hours. Her shoes were off, her hair was matted into a bun that had collapsed on itself, and her desk looked like the aftermath of a corporate apocalypse. Sticky notes clinging to half-drunk Diet Cokes, power bars in various states of decay, and a wrinkled post-it that just read, "Don't let him steal it this time." Because she knew David. David with the perfect teeth and the talent for making everyone feel like they owed him lunch. David who hadn't attended a single project sync in 6 months, but somehow always popped in to charm the VP during milestone reviews. David who once called her a wizard with spreadsheets like he was complimenting a barista's latte art. David who made a joke last week, if you could call it a joke, about how his job was to make her work shine. The kind of joke that comes with a pat on the back and a whiff of chloroform. Slide 129. The final thank you screen. Emma hovered her mouse over the closing logo and allowed herself a breath. She had done it. The Odyssey project, her 12-month labor of obsessive perfectionism, was ready. A clean, multi-million-dollar solution that could win the company their biggest client in a decade. It was her baby, her magnum opus. Her all-nighters and canceled dates and skipped birthdays distilled into one bulletproof deck of slides. She sat back, the hum of the monitor bathing her in a pale glow, and whispered, "Please, just let me have this one." And hey, speaking of having things, I don't mean to kill the vibe, but 97% of y'all who are watching this story right now aren't subscribed. Yeah, I checked. If you want to help me hit my first 10,000 subscribers like ever, now's your moment. Click the thing. It helps more than you think. All right, back to the heartbreak. Her inbox pinged. Calendar notification. Presentation file due on shared drive by 7 a.m. She checked the clock, 6:04. She saved the file under the folder clearly labeled Odyssey Final, used this one real PPTX and uploaded it. Then she saved it again. Then again, then again. Paranoia was part of her process. She checked the metadata, created by Emma Jenkins, modified by Emma Jenkins. She even left a tiny smiley face in the notes section of slide 64, just for herself. Her signature. A little FU to the future in case things went sideways. She stood up, legs numb, spine cracking like bubble wrap, and stretched toward the ceiling. A groan slipped out of her mouth like something feral. She hadn't eaten anything with a vitamin in days. Her Fitbit was probably planning an intervention. Behind her, the office was quiet. Too quiet. Even the janitor had pieced out around 4. The floor-ceiling windows reflected her hollow-eyed ghost back at her, blazer wrinkled, mascara hanging on for dear life. But she looked proud. There was fire behind those bags under her eyes. And then, the smell, David's cologne, that smarmy, citrusy, I'm-a-CEO-in-waiting stink that drifted in before he did. Her stomach clenched as she heard the elevator ding. He always came in late and left early, but when there was glory to sniff out, he floated in like a shark sniffing corporate blood. "Emma," he grinned, walking in like a man who'd already won. "Still here, burning the midnight oil? You really are something else." She offered him a polite, dead-eyed smile. Had to make sure the Odyssey file was perfect. Of course, he nodded, eyeing her laptop like it owed him something. "You know, I was thinking, maybe I could do the pitch tomorrow. Just to, make sure it lands with the execs. I speak fluent boardroom after all." She froze. Her jaw moved, but words didn't come out. He clapped her on the back before she could respond, the way one might pat a loyal dog after it fetched a stick. "I mean, you did the groundwork, obviously. I'm just the closer. The polish, the cherry on top." She forced a laugh. "Sure, David, just make sure you don't accidentally delete the cherry." But her gut twisted. Because that was the thing about David. He always got what he wanted. The question wasn't if he would try to take credit. The question was how far he'd go this time. The sun hadn't even fully clawed its way over the horizon when Emma strode into the office like a woman on the cusp of triumph. She had a small, smug smile tucked in her cheek, the kind you wear when you've already imagined how the next 12 hours will unfold. Applause, handshakes, that holy grail word promotion, maybe even a catered lunch with real silverware. She even wore mascara that morning, which for Emma was basically red carpet levels of optimism. Her first instinct was to double-check the presentation file, because no matter how bulletproof your work is, when the stakes are high enough, paranoia becomes your spirit animal. She clicked through to the shared drive where she'd uploaded Odyssey Final, used this one real PPTX, but the name had changed. Now it read Odyssey Presentation DJM PPTX. DJM, David James Miller. Her stomach went cold before her brain caught up. Hands already clammy, she opened the file, slide by slide, identical. Every chart, every transition, every meticulously curated talking point, the same, until she checked the file details. Created by David Miller. Last modified by David Miller. Her vision tunneled. It was like watching a home video of your wedding night and realizing someone had deep-faked your face out of it. She yanked out her chair and sat down hard. A muscle in her jaw ticked as she tabbed through the slides again, hoping, praying, there was at least some bastardized right she could use to call him out. But no, He hadn't changed a word. He didn't even bother to ruin it. He just put his greasy little watermark on her Mona Lisa and called it a day. Slack ping popped up on her screen. David Miller, can you pop by my office when you get a sec? Want to align before the big show? The smiley face made her want to scream. She didn't knock, just walked into his glass-walled lair, where David was already half reclined in his overpriced ergonomic throne, sipping oat milk cappuccino from a mug that said boss mode activated. The man wore smug like cologne, an actual cologne like an airstrike. Emma, he said, spreading his arms like she was returning from war. Wow, looks like we both pulled all-nighters. Great minds, huh? Her mouth was dry. I noticed the file changed. Yeah, I figured I'd give it a little executive polish, he said, breezy as ever. No offense, your version was tight, but you know how these boardroom folks are. They respond to confidence. Swagger, the human touch. You changed the metadata. He blinked. The what now? She held his gaze, voice flat. File says you created it and that you modified it, and I'm locked out. He smiled like she just said something adorable. That's just how the system logs edits, no? I mean, once I opened it on my end. Maybe it just overwrote it, you know how IT is. Anyway, don't worry, I'll give you a shout out. Big props to my rockstar project lead, yeah? You'll love it. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. She was quiet too long, and David, ever the opportunist, interpreted silence as surrender. I'm telling you, he went on, tapping the file on his laptop. You'll thank me after this. I mean, let's be honest, who do you think they want to hear from? Me or the woman who once ran a 3-minute queue in on latency metrics? He laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. It was a knife wrapped in charm. And just like that, the future she had built, slide by slide, stat by stat, was hijacked. He'd boarded her ship, waved her flag, and thrown her overboard in the night. The Odyssey project wasn't hers anymore. It was his, on paper, on screen, in that executive boardroom where futures were minted and forgotten. Emma didn't cry, she didn't even flinch, but something in her face shifted, some delicate, exhausted thing snapped and fused into something harder. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy forming. The human body's got limits. It'll take the caffeine abuse, sleep deprivation, the emotional whiplash, but there's a moment where the soul just sits down. Emma hit that point in the stairwell, slumped against cold concrete 3 flights below the executive suite. Her hands were still shaking from rage or adrenaline or maybe both. She stared at the carpeted steps like they held the answers. Her work, her name, her life was about to be paraded around by a man who once asked if RAM was still a thing. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw his stupid cappuccino mug at the moon. Instead, she sat, quiet, boiling. And then slowly the steam cleared and something slick and dark and brilliant took its place. Emma's brain has always been good at remembering the weird stuff. Not birthdays, not whether she locked her front door, but things like shortcut codes in Legacy Excel or obscure PowerPoint training modules from the days of mandatory seminars. She'd been half asleep in that session back in 2019, doodling spirals on the handout while the instructor babbled about interactive presentation triggers. But one phrase had burrowed into her skull: custom slide reveal, activated only through specific remote commands, like a key sequence. Left, up, enter. That kind of thing. She sat up. Her eyes went wide. Her hand flew to her laptop. Screw his executive polish. If David wanted to steal the crown, fine, let him wear it, because now Emma was going to make sure it exploded on his damn head. She raced back to her desk like a woman possessed, opened her original file, the real one, and duplicated it. She didn't need the whole thing. She just needed one slide, one bullet fired in silence, one reveal that would hit harder than a lawsuit wrapped in a resignation letter. Slide 130. She pasted in the original file metadata screen. Her name, her timestamps, clear as day. Next, she dropped in a tiny audio clip just 6 seconds long from a recorded Zoom call 6 weeks ago. She'd saved it by accident while transcribing notes. David's voice chuckling. Emma's great with all that technical mumbo-jumbo. I don't even try to follow it. Perfect. Lazy, dismissive, condescending. She layered in the text, white letters, black background, no transition fluff, authored by Emma Jenkins. Stolen by David Miller. She sat back, heart jackhammering in her chest. It was raw, cold, it would do. But now came the real trick, how to hide it in his version. Because David was lazy, but he wasn't stupid. If she slipped it in like a regular slide, he might notice. Delete it, game over. So she opened the master slide layout, the skeleton of the entire deck. The thing that people like David never touched because they didn't even know it existed. And in that hidden architecture, she embedded a single hyperlink behind a blank shape in the corner, tied it to her Trojan slide. Then she wrote the trigger. Remote click back, only after the final slide. That was the sequence. That was the key. 2 careless taps from David, who was guaranteed to fumble during his humblebrag Q&A. He'd do it. He always overperformed when people clapped. She tested it 10 times. It was invisible, untouchable, until you clicked just right. She uploaded it to the company drive, giving it the same file name as his, Odyssey Presentation DJMPPTX, overriding his version silently while he was at lunch, probably seducing a Cobb salad into funding his startup. Then she sat still, just for a moment, breathing through her nose, pulse in her neck like a war drum. She had just become a weapon. A soft ding from Slack pulled her out of the moment. David Miller, hey rockstar. Don't forget to bring your laptop to the presentation. Just in case, you never know, right? She stared at the message, smiled, and whispered, oh David, you really have no idea. The boardroom was a cathedral of sterile opulence, chrome fixtures, soft leather chairs arranged like judgment thrones, a 40-foot screen at the front of the room, glowing with the company logo like a prophet's curtain. It smelled like citrus polish, high-stakes caffeine, and the blood of the overworked. Emma sat 3 rows back, dead center, where she could see everything and be seen by no one. The Odyssey deck flickered to life. David strolled up to the front, wireless remote in hand like a TED talk savant, his perfectly tousled hair catching the light as if God herself had chosen him to sell synergy. He straightened his jacket, cleared his throat with performative humility, and beamed. Good morning, everyone, he said, voice smooth as melted butter on a country club waffle. Today, I have the privilege of walking you through something very close to our hearts, the Odyssey Project, our hearts. Emma bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted metal. Slide 1, vision statement, her phrasing, word for word. She remembered pacing around her apartment at midnight perfecting that tone, aspirational but grounded, bold but plausible. David read it like it came to him during a particularly insightful spin class. She felt it in her gut. He had rehearsed her exact cadence. He had studied her sentence rhythms like scripture. This wasn't a man winging it, this was a polished parasite, a charming mimicking parasite in Hugo Boss loafers. Slide 3, market disruption models, her graphs, her layout, the colors she picked after 4 arguments with marketing. David chuckled at just the right moments, dropped buzzwords like breadcrumbs, scalable, robust, turnkey. The execs leaned in. The visiting client rep from Aurelius Technologies, the man they were all here to impress, nodded thoughtfully. Emma's heart punched against her ribs like it wanted out of her chest. She'd planned this entire flow, slide by slide, to escalate tension, resolve objections, land soft on the sell. Now she was watching her choreography performed by a man who once asked if cloud-based meant they needed weather insurance. Slide 7, risk mitigation forecasts. The CFO leaned forward. David smiled like a televangelist about to ask for your wallet. We all know implementation's only as good as the fallout plan. And our team, he gestured vaguely back toward the seats, has taken that seriously. Our team. As if he hadn't ghosted 3 months' worth of dev meetings to flirt with interns and network at overpriced lunches. Emma's throat tightened. Her foot tapped beneath the table like it was trying to dig her a tunnel out of the building. Her notes, her speaker cues, her cue and a prep, he was using every inch of it, right down to the joke about enterprise-level headaches on slide 12. Each burst of polite laughter felt like a slap, each approving nod like a betrayal she hadn't earned but still had to endure. She dared a glance around the room. No one was looking at her. No one even remembered she existed. She was a ghost in a chair, a forgotten draft in a folder. She had to grip the underside of the table to keep her hands from shaking. Her fingers curled against the lacquered wood until her knuckles went white. She didn't care about the credit, not really. Not the title, not the handshakes. What cut deep was watching her work become great in the wrong hands, watching mediocrity wear genius like a stolen coat. Slide 15, ROI models. He didn't fumble, didn't miss a cue. He even threw in an improvised callback to something the VP had said during last quarter's earnings call, a detail she'd told him in passing during a team lunch. The man couldn't spell analytics without a cheat sheet, but here he was, basking in her architecture. The room buzzed with approval, a low hum of executive energy. People were impressed, intrigued, hooked. She swallowed the lump in her throat and checked her watch. He was nearing the final slide. That meant her moment, her gamble, was coming. But doubt crept in like a cold draft under the door. What if he didn't hit the sequence? What if he closed the deck early? What if someone asked a question before the trap sprung, and the whole moment fizzled like a dying firecracker? What if she had been too clever for her own damn good? She felt sick. The screen flicked to slide 129. Thank you, David said, exhaling with the satisfaction of a man who'd just landed the Mars rover on a golf course. We're excited to move forward. Applause erupted. Loud, genuine, standing ovation levels of respect. The CEO clapped, the client nodded, and David smiled, full teeth, full ego, full thief. Emma blinked, stunned. Nothing had happened. No glitch, no slide, no justice. Her palms were slick, her face was frozen, her bones felt hollow. The gamble hadn't worked. The trap was still buried, and David Miller had just become a corporate legend on her blood. It felt like the longest 5 seconds of her life. The thank you slide loomed large on the screen, David centered beneath it like he'd personally invented the damn phrase. The applause began as polite, then built fast, chests rising, hands clapping. Even the visiting client pushing up from his chair with a nod of reverent approval. A standing ovation. David looked like a man ascending. He did a faux humble chuckle, then bowed, yes, bowed, like some Renaissance performer tossing roses to the crowd. He gave the CEO a confident glance, then locked eyes with the Aurelius rep and threw in a charismatic finger gun gesture that should have made the building collapse out of shame. Emma sat frozen in her chair, a statue of disbelief with a front row seat to her own erasure. People were beaming at him, real smiles, real admiration. One exec even turned to the person beside her and whispered, "We've needed this kind of thinking for years." Emma heard that, every syllable like a nail hammered into her ribs. David didn't just steal her work, he wore it better. That was the real crime. He made her brilliance look easy, like he'd birthed it during a bath soak and a glass of Chianti. His voice didn't shake. His transitions were smooth. And when he walked to the side and clicked his remote to mute the display, she swore she saw his shoulders rise an inch taller. She clenched her fists in her lap, nails digging into her skin so hard it felt like they might break through. Her vision blurred for a moment, and before she could blink it away, a single tear escaped, slow, hot, and traitorous. She wiped it fast, hoping no one saw, but it wasn't just sorrow. It was shame, fury, that deep, gnawing humiliation of knowing you'd shown up to a gunfight with a perfect plan and left without firing a single shot. This wasn't just her losing the credit, this was her being made invisible. Worse, optional, replaceable. The brilliant nobody whose genius would be entombed beneath David's LinkedIn endorsements. He was thanking people now, shaking hands, accepting compliments like they were overdue refunds, and it stung because she knew he didn't understand half of what he'd just said. A part of her whispered, "Say something, stand up, rip off the mask," but she didn't, because what if she was crazy? What if she stood up and screamed and the hidden slide still didn't work? What if David had unknowingly saved himself by being slightly less sloppy than she'd counted on? The silence from her Trojan horse was deafening. She gambled everything on precision, on timing, on a moment she couldn't manufacture, only hope for, and now it was slipping through her fingers like sand. David turned back toward the screen for one last flourish, still basking in the limelight. Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was the end. And her hand, resting on her thigh, curled into a fist so tight her fingernails left perfect little crescent moons in her skin. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Just as Emma had begun to drown in the concrete realization that David had won, that her masterstroke had fizzled out like a wet match, the universe, unprompted, smug, cleared its throat. "David," came the CEO's voice, warm and impressed. "That was brilliant. Could you go back one slide to that incredible ROI projection? I want to jot those numbers down." David, still glowing with post-performance sweat and champagne-level ego, turned toward her like she'd just handed him a second trophy. "Of course," he said, holding up the remote with the casual flair of a magician mid-card trick. "Happy to revisit the magic." Emma's heart jolted, one click. The screen jumped backward, landing neatly on the thank you slide, the one he had just left, the one she hadn't tampered with. David furrowed his brow slightly, probably annoyed the tech didn't read his mind, and clicked again. Back, back. Emma stopped breathing, because that was the sequence. The screen flickered, just a blink, kind of glitch you'd ignore unless you designed it. David cocked his head, then it happened. The slide didn't show the ROI graph, instead it bled to black. Then white text bloomed across the screen like a slap across the room, authored by Emma Jenkins, stolen by David Miller. The words hung there for a heartbeat. And then her voice, soft, recorded, undeniable, played through the speakers. "Emma's great with all that technical mumbo-jumbo. I don't even try to follow it." David froze, he didn't move, didn't blink. The room followed his lead, laughter stuttered into silence. You could practically hear the molecules of confusion assembling themselves midair. Another beat. Emma sat up straighter, spine a steel rod. The audio clip echoed again, louder this time as David instinctively jabbed at the remote like a toddler mashing elevator buttons, trying to jump out of the moment, but instead triggering a full replay of the clip. "Emma's great with all that technical mumbo-jumbo. I don't even try to follow it." The air in the room thinned. David's face drained of color. His lips parted slightly as if searching for the shape of a sentence, but none came. A ripple moved through the room. The visiting client leaned forward. The CEO's smile flattened into a hard, puzzled line. Someone near the front whispered, "Did he just admit?" David tried again, thumbing the remote like maybe, just maybe, could undo reality, but the screen wasn't done. Emma's original file metadata appeared now, created by Emma Jenkins, modified by Emma Jenkins, date-stamped, time-stamped, undeniable, no graphics, no transitions, no bells or whistles, just facts. Naked, cold, blinding. Emma stared, still silent, every nerve in her body humming. Her heart wasn't beating anymore. It was drumming, a slow, deep war rhythm. It had worked. After everything, the all-nighter. Stairwell despair, the second guessing, the stolen applause, her trap had worked. She watched as the room turned, one by one, like a chorus of spotlights swiveling to a single point of shame, and David Miller stood frozen at the altar of his own undoing. At first, no one moved. The screen stayed frozen, Emma's metadata glaring like a police spotlight. The line about technical mumbo-jumbo still echoed faintly in the corners of the room like a ghost refusing to leave. David's arm hovered midair, still pointing the remote at the projector, like if he just held the posture long enough, time might rewind. Like maybe this was just a rogue buffer issue and any second now his beloved ROI chart would return to save him. But it didn't. And the silence that followed wasn't neutral, it was sharp, surgical, the kind that dissects people without laying a finger on them. The CEO leaned forward in her chair, not hurried, not shocked, just slow and precise like a cat tilting its head before the pounce. David, she said, voice dry as dust, what exactly are we looking at? Her tone held no rage, no panic, just that deadly, clipped calm that corporate predators use right before they drag someone into a conference room and end their career with a four-word sentence and a manila envelope. David opened his mouth, and nothing came out. His brain stuttered, clearly searching for a lie that might pass the sniff test. I don't know, he managed, voice cracking slightly. I didn't, someone must have. Emma stood, slowly, deliberately, and every chair turned to her like the air itself was shifting weight. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just picked up her laptop bag from under her seat and walked, calm as a surgeon, to the front of the room. David turned, eyes wide, jaw half-hinged, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Like maybe she was the hallucination and this whole moment a glitch in the matrix designed to punish hubris. Emma didn't look at him. She walked past him like he was scenery, like he was the printer that never worked, irrelevant and humming uselessly in the background. She reached the table, unplugged the HDMI from the company laptop, and inserted her own cord. The screen went black. Then, her desktop. Folders organized. Clean, no fluff, no games. She opened the original Odyssey file, her version. It bloomed open in front of everyone, slide deck perfectly intact, complete with speaker notes, data logs, version history. She clicked to file info. And there it was again, created by Emma Jenkins, last modified by Emma Jenkins, created 8 months ago, modified 2 days ago. The timestamps aligned with everything David had just claimed as his own. And she opened the audio recorder folder, highlighted the date, played the full clip, this time with the context David didn't know existed. Yeah, I mean, look, I let Emma handle all that tech crap. I don't pretend to get it. Long as she keeps the wheels on, I just make sure the suits are happy. She let that hang. Then finally turned toward the room. I believe the work, she said softly, should speak for itself. No drama, no rage, just the truth, delivered like a scalpel. No one clapped, no one moved, because they were all watching a man slowly realize that his parachute was just a folded napkin with his name on it. And behind him, the screen still glowed with the words, "Stolen by David Miller." The room was a vacuum, no breath, no movement, just the ambient hum of recessed lighting and the looping clip of David's voice throwing himself under a bus he didn't know was coming. Yeah, I mean, look, I let Emma handle all that tech crap. The audio stuttered as David, in full meltdown mode, jabbed the remote like it might bite him. His hand trembled so violently he clicked the same button 3 times, fast enough to replay the clip again. Tech crap. I don't pretend to get it, it echoed louder now, bouncing off the conference room glass like it was being announced by God. He finally managed to switch the input, killing the projector feed mercifully, leaving the screen black, but it was too late. The silence wasn't silence anymore, it was judgment, a slow, spreading infection of side eyes and realization. David looked around, wild-eyed. His face had gone from boardroom tan to blotchy pink, then straight into corpse-level gray. He opened his mouth again, but only half syllables came out. No one helped him, not a single person, not even Taylor from marketing, once laughed at every one of his jokes like they were married. And then, like a synchronized swim of accusation, every head in the room turned to Emma. She stood near the back now, having returned to her original seat like nothing had happened. Her hands were clasped calmly in front of her, her chin up, her expression unreadable, not smug, not triumphant, just still. That silence cracked something in David. He pivoted toward her, voice half breathless, half desperate. Emma, what the hell was that? She didn't answer, didn't flinch, didn't give him the dignity of a reaction, because the room had already answered for her. The CEO leaned forward again, her fingers laced beneath her chin. You claimed this work was yours, she said, tone devoid of warmth. You stated on record you created it. David stammered. I polished it. I mean, I took her framework and I assumed. Assumed what exactly? The Aurelius rep asked, voice low and flat, that she wouldn't mind if you replaced her name with yours? More silence, thicker this time, charged. David shifted his weight like the floor might open up and swallow him whole. Sweat bloomed on his shirt collar. The buttons on his cuff looked suddenly too tight, like they were judging him too, and Emma just stood there, not basking, not gloating, letting the moment devour him without lifting a finger. That was the part that rattled them the most. Not just that David had lied, but that she had built a minefield in silence and let him dance into it on his own. It wasn't an accident, it was premeditated, and nobody knew what to do with that. The CEO's voice landed like a gavel. David, what is the meaning of this? No raised tone, no fury, just surgical coldness, the kind of voice that knew how to fire people without blinking. David opened his mouth, but words failed him. He looked down, blinking. Like maybe if he didn't look anyone in the eye, the room might forget he existed. But Emma didn't give him the chance. She rose without a word, lifted her bag from under her chair, and walked to the front like she belonged there. Like she always should have been there. Nobody stopped her. She didn't ask permission. She didn't look at David. She simply pulled her laptop out, connected the HDMI cable with a soft click, and opened the original file. Projector screen flared to life. There it was, Odyssey Project EJ Master PPTX. No fluff, no tricks. She navigated to File Info, displayed the full version history. Her name stamped on every edit, her timestamps, her revision notes, her audio files. Then she opened the speaker notes, pages and pages of commentary, context, strategy. Slides annotated with her internal logic, her market citations, her breakdowns of scalability and implementation. It was a blueprint of brilliance. And nobody could deny it now. She didn't raise her voice, didn't flash a smile. She stood calmly beside the screen, one hand lightly resting on the table edge, and said, "I've worked on this project for just over 12 months. These are my notes, my planning, my voice. I'm not here to give a speech. I'm just here to make one thing clear." She clicked once more. The slide read, in simple black font, "Let the work speak for itself." Then she looked up and said, "And it has." Silence again. But this time it wasn't awkward, it was reverent, a pause before the guillotine. The CEO didn't hesitate. "David," she said, "you're dismissed, effective immediately. Leave your badge on the table." He blinked, stared. "Wait, what can we?" "No," she said, "we're done here." Security didn't need to be called. David got the message. He moved like a man walking underwater, collecting his phone and nothing else. No one made eye contact. No one said goodbye. He glanced back once, just once, as he stepped out the door like he might still be dreaming. Emma didn't look at him. He didn't matter anymore. The Aurelius rep stood up. "That," he said with a small nod, "was the most honest thing I've seen in a pitch meeting in 10 years. The contract was signed that afternoon. The CEO called Emma into her office an hour later, offered her David's title and a new salary band that would have made her weep 6 months ago. She accepted with a nod, and that was it. She walked out of that office carrying more power than she'd ever had, and with it, a kind of gravity. People respected her now, but they also feared her, not because she'd shouted or stormed out or thrown punches, but because she'd waited, calculated, laid a silent trap with the patience of someone who could burn down a building without lifting her voice. She passed by David's old office on the way out that evening. The desk already cleared, a janitor wiping fingerprints off the glass. She paused just long enough to see her reflection in the doorway. Not victorious, not vindicated, just finished. Emma had burned the bridge, and she hadn't just salted the earth behind her. She'd paved it with warning signs for anyone who'd try that path again. She walked away without looking back, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.